separatist halt circulation between Mutengeni and Libe towns of the Fako of the southwest region of Cameroon for several hours. Meantime, Yaoundé goes in fear, panic again after the discovery of locally made bomb at the Ministry of Administrative Reforms, that is the Ministry of Public Service and Administrative Reforms in Cameroon's political capital city, a Cameroon that an expert will be describing in this edition of the news talking point as a Cameroon that is on a very difficult stage, and dialogue must be the center of the day or it falls. Ladies and gentlemen, you are on to the primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television. We are live from Equinoxe Central News Desk in Douala, Cameroon's economic capital city. Thanks for making the right choice to listen to news on Equinoxe. Yaoundé, Cameroon goes panicking today after the discovery of a locally fabricated or locally made bomb or an explosive. It was discovered and neutralized at the Ministry of Public Service and Administrative Reforms in the heart of the city of Yaoundé. This also led to the coming onto the scene of the incident of security men on the site. They worked harder to neutralize the bomb discovered. According to local reports, the explosive was discovered in a cardboard file, and of course it was in room number 207 of the building hosting the Ministry of Public Service and Administrative Reforms in Yaoundé, Cameroon. It should be noted that the discovery today comes less than a week after a locally made explosive exploded at Maché Mukolo at Bata Mukolo in Yaoundé, Cameroon. It is a wave or a part of a series of explosives that have either exploded or been discovered in Yaoundé. Cameroonians have not forgotten the explosive that took place, or the explosion that took place at the Damas neighborhood of Yaoundé, wounding some other persons and leaving others psychologically affected. That has pushed Cameroonians to question what is becoming of the entire nation at a time when the armed conflict in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon has continued to take a disturbing twist, with disturbing forms of killings ongoing on a daily basis. And from Yaoundé, Cameroon, we take you to the armed conflict in the northwest and southwest regions to say that alleged separatists today halted circulation between Mutengeni, the town of Mutengeni, under Tiko subdivision of the Fako in the southwest region of Cameroon, and the city of Limbi, still within the Fako of the southwest region of Cameroon. As you could see there, drivers moving to and from Limbi through Mutengeni we are forced to park their vehicles, and of course after reports of separatists who allegedly blocked the road at a place known as Ombe, a locality in Mutengeni. For several hours, circulation between Mutengeni and Limbe was halted. It should be recorded it was a Monday, and Monday has witnessed towns ghosted in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon for over 3 years now as an arm or a weapon used by separatists to paralyze the economic activities in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. But reports from Mutengeni and the southwest region indicates that after several hours, the circulation was again re-established between Mutengeni and Limbi of the southwest region of Cameroon. We shall be coming back to this story in subsequent editions of News on Equinoxe Television. And I will stay in the Fako division, but this time around from Mutengeni, moving up to Buea, where reports say there has been a rising waves of crimes within the Buea urban municipality. And to be able to curb the increase in crime waves, which has been described by victims as disturbing, the Buea Council has embarked on a process to identify individuals using township taxis within Buya. These focus or these taxes are targeted because the criminals, according to Buya inhabitants, use township taxis to operate, as Derijato tells us from Buya.
Organized crime in Buya municipality is increasing, and the Buya Council has noticed that the perpetrators have been penetrating through the transport sector. They come in as operators of township taxis, hit their target of victims and disappeared.
We had a situation where they harass somebody, took millions and all those type of things. We don't condone and will not accept it.
Musoko Edward, the second deputy mayor of the Buya Council, has been given the assignment to redress the situation, and he's faced discovery. Too many unidentified taxis in his municipality.
Of recent, taxis in Buya has kind of quadrupled. So adventurers took advantage to infiltrate this their sector and cause a lot of trouble.
Today he has convened a meeting with the executive members of the Taxi Drivers Syndicate and a union operating in Buya subdivision.
That is why we said we should form kind of platform of understanding where we can easily identify and smoke out some of these people who want to come and destabilize this noble profession.
Mokete Jude, the union regional president, pointed out that it was timely that the Buya Council step in.
And the rush between our syndicates to produce badges that we could not meet up in time, we resolved that the council should get involved and administration for the purpose of security and harmonization.
This university town called Buya is a hub for cyber technology, and Musoko Edwards says his office is also changing with the changing times.
We just did symbolic handing over, and we are in the process to distribute these digitalized or computerized cards. We have a way to check them. We have to ensure with the union leaders to make sure these things will not go out of place.
In the days ahead, it will be either you live with this identification badge as a taxi driver operating in Buya, or leave the street of Buya for the identified ones.
Apart from insecurity, water scarcity and underdevelopment has remained as some of the major issues affecting Cameroonians in different localities, as continuous demand for government to better the living conditions of people have on many cases fallen on deaf ears. These are statements made by some of local inhabitants asking government for developmental projects. In the following report, Equinoxe Tv will be taking us to some of the localities in Cameroon suffering from high underdevelopment as well as the lack of water, a basic necessity.
Potable water has become a common cankerworm in most localities across Cameroon. While the populations of some affected villages keep hoping for government intervention, others have decided to walk while crying. For instance, in Quenfondom, under the leadership of His Royal Majesty Fonazefo III, initiatives to have sustainable water supply in various quarters are nursed.
It's a landmark in the history of Bujon Quarter, given that the youth have taken upon themselves under the canopy of Muma Zepho, who summoned them a few days ago, and it's come to fruition that they've set up a youth council, and the resolutions that have just taken, we wish and pray that we try as much as possible to implement them, amongst which we want to see that the problem of water is resolved, so that at least everybody can have water. Looking forward to having or maintaining a well where everybody can at least have a sip from it.
Apart from this, insecurity, juvenile delinquency, and underdevelopment are to face the wrath of the Fonmuma Azefo III's Youth Council.
We are looking forward to see that the problem of indiscipline is handled. The problem of drunkenness, problem of disrespect is handled. In the days ahead, the ESCO is going to sit and look at sanctions should a youth go against what we decided. We'll see that we sanction, of course, with precaution to bring them to order and bring them together, so that together we can move Bujong and Quen to another level.
We think that with the hands jointly together,
everything will move on well. We want Bujong as one to be an example that all the other quarters in Kwen will have to follow.
Sons and daughters in and out of the village are expected to join heads together and provide the 58 quarters making up Nkwen the desired basic social amenities.
Innocent has rather focused on the picture of Nkwen, a locality in Bamenda in the northwest region of Cameroon. Meantime, our reporter Smart Njikan Gabriel will be taking us to Sanchu. Sanchu, a locality in the Menua division of the west region of Cameroon, to tell you how inhabitants and locals are urging the government to help them give portable drinking water and other developmental challenges. They say they have barely been abandoned by the government of Cameroon. His report.
Inhabitants of Sancho in the Menua division of the West region use water from the well in drinking, washing of plates and dresses. It is a situation they have been into for several years now.
We are suffering because of water. We don't have tap there. We only use but well. Even drink it, of which is not normal to drink well. So we want that they should help us to provide us a tap so that we can manage. So there is too much sick here because of the water.
The population of Sancho are calling on the government to come to their rescue.
The government, we are begging people to please help us. We don't have water here. Our problem is drinking water, water to bathe, wash dresses. So we have little children around, so they cannot drink well water to provide us tap water so that we can be using it, so that the children will not be sick, because there are too much sickness for malaria, typhoid because of water.
As the population continue to wait, the mayor of Sancho Council reassures. Sancho has this water crisis for several years now. Boreholes can't work effectively because of electricity supply is poor. After we insisted, FECOM has finally looked on our problem. They have given us 251 million francs CFA for the water project. We are now in talks with Cam Water.
Let's continue observing the measures put in place by the government.
Sensitization has taken another twist in Sancho as the country continues to preach against the deadly effect of the coronavirus.
Or any other person.
Notwithstanding the ongoing sensitization in public places, particularly the markets, many are without their face mask. Before, all of us were putting it on. Look at the town, no one is putting on a face mask again. Mine is here. Before, gendarmes were behind us and we were putting it on. Me putting it on won't change anything. I have a mask. When we are breathing, we eject carbon dioxide and take in oxygen. But now, when I breathe out, I receive the same air. That will kill us. In the last ministerial meeting on the follow-up of the spread of the virus in the country, Chief Dr. Joseph Dongute gave strict instructions that Cameroonians must put on face masks in public places.
And Cameroon's Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Celestin Kechakutes, has expressed satisfaction with the ongoing works carried out public works carried out in Ngaoundéré, chief town of the Adama region of Cameroon. During her 2-day visit to Ngaoundéré, Minister Celestin Kechakutes went around town to see for herself the state of road and low-cost houses so far under construction in that part of the Grand Nord region of Cameroon. She then appreciated the effort made by MES in Ngaoundéré, though she thinks a lot more has to be done. Take a listen to Celestin Kechakutes in this extract selected by Immaculate Fogwe.
I'm very happy to see that the low-cost housing are there. I went to see Minji regional delegation, newly built. We have a wonderful building, 92 office, so we can support to have other administration to make sure that this building will be alive. So I'm happy to be here, happy to visit all these urban roads and to see that the mayor is doing his own, because the development will be from the local. So when the local and the national put hands together, the development will be true. And I'm happy to see what the mayor actually are doing. And going back to Yande, I will support the work that is doing on the ground to make sure that we fulfill the wish of the President of the Republic to modernize our city.
You listened there to Cameroon's Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Madame Celestine Kechakutes. She was speaking in Gaoundéré, chieftain of the Adama region of Cameroon. And I will talk something else. Cameroon's Ministry of Secondary Education today had a press conference in the nation's political capital city, Yaoundé, making key declarations on some of the subjects written in public examinations organized by the ministry. Some of the subjects which had problems, notably some of the subjects some of the questions that were found on social media even before candidates went in to write. It, however, remains uncertain how the papers and the examination questions of the subjects concerned managed to find themselves on social media. And at the end of the event, we had a declaration or a statement from the ministry with regards to that.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can sit down. Here this afternoon. Usually I would like to be here for something nice and light. That's what I identify with my conference room. But it's a pity that I am here for something which is not so nice. And I hope that this will be the first and the last time when I come to do such a thing. And that you will permit me to work well so that we don't have to carry on such acts. It is shameful that we have to do this. But what we have to do, we have to do. We shall do what we have to do. So this afternoon, I'm just going to give you my point of view, and then I will let you do what you need to do. Now, the Minister of Secondary Education informs the national and international community that the 2020 session of the baccalaureate exam was marred by cases of examination leakage in physique, sciences de la vie et de la terre et chimie, CRC and technologie de l'information, TI. After consultation with the Prime Minister, head of government, and upon his instruction, the minister cancelled and rescheduled the contested papers. To shed more light on this leakage, the Minister of Secondary Education set up an administrative commission of inquiry by decision number 275/20/MINESEC/CAB of 28th July 2020, comprising senior officials of the Ministry of Secondary Education. This commission was chaired by the Secretary General of the said ministry, Professor Fabian Koch. The Administrative Commission of Inquiry carried out its work from 28th July to 17th August 2020. As part of its work, it received assistance from the following bodies: the Judicial Police Department, the National Anti-Corruption Commission, CONAC, and the National Agency for Information and Communication Technologies, ANTIC. From the findings of its report, it emerges that the source of the leakage of the examinations has been identified and those responsible ascertained. On this basis, provisional measures have been taken, suspending the culprits. The Director of the Office of Baccalaureate du Cameroon, Mr. Roger Etienne Minkulu, has been instructed to ensure the full application of the measures taken. The culprits will be handed over to the competent services of the state to answer for their obnoxious offenses. The Minister of Secondary Education seizes this opportunity to acknowledge the frank collaboration she has enjoyed from the Secretary of State, Mr. Bayola Boniface, in the management of this file. She congratulates the Secretary General of MINESEC, the Chairperson of the Administrative Commission of Inquiry, and all the members of this commission for the work done.
Was Minister Nalova Lyonga, Cameroon's Minister of Secondary Education, making a declaration on some of the leakages observed during the written part of some official examinations organized by her ministry, both in the French and English subsystems of education in Cameroon. Ladies and gentlemen, coming up is Talking Point. Thanks for joining us on Talking Points. We are receiving Mr. Wana Emmanuel Boumakor. He is the spokesperson of the Acts Agile movements of Christian Pendaikuka, and he is also a specialist in peace studies and conflict management. Thanks for accepting our invitation.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Armstrong.
It's actually the first time I'm having you on set.
Yes, it's a pleasure for me being here to discuss about the issues concerning our country.
I was reading through your Facebook handle when I got interested in some of your write-ups. One first had to do with the conflicts in the northeast and southwest regions of Cameroon, and wherein you tried to outline why people should not be surprised with the fact that the conflict was picked or tipped to be one of the most neglected conflicts around the world. Can you explain that further?
Yes, since the Anglophone crisis started, we're getting to 4 years, but the armed conflict is 3 years old now, and the consequences, the impact has been very deplorable, with more than 3,000 people dead.
Indeed.
And more than 500,000 people displaced in and out of the country. So it's really preoccupying. Normally when an international crisis happens like that, it calls for international concern, because they want to curb and assuage the humanitarian
of that magnitude.
Yes, the humanitarian disaster.
Yes,
because it can spill over to other countries in the region, and it can destabilize the region. So we live in a global village today, where when something happens in one country, it affects the other people, because many people trade from different countries. We are in a digital economy, and people are working from distant places and
one
trading. When something is happening, when there's a humanitarian crisis happening, the international community is very concerned and wants to see how this crisis can be ended. But we have noticed that it has not been the case with the Cameroon, the Anglophone crisis since it started. There has been some neglect, and the Norwegian Refugee Council reported that Cameroon is one of the Anglophone crisis in Cameroon is one of the most neglected, most neglected crisis in the world, humanitarian crisis, for the second year in a row.
Imagine with over 3,000 persons killed, as you indicated, and over 500,000 displaced. Normally, the crisis is not having enough attention from the international community.
Yes, normally we're supposed to have a meeting at the Security Council, because the UN Security Council has the mandate of always trying to restore peace and stability in the world. So that's why we are surprised why up to now there has not been any meeting, and it is because the government has been playing a sort of a double game. What they are trying to do is to respond to the needs of the international community and not to respond to the crisis, that is to the needs of the people, to solve the crisis and to make sure that there's an inclusive dialogue where there can be a sustainable peace in the country. They have not succeeded to do that, and many people are asking themselves, what is really going on? We have seen how the crisis has escalated onto people. I don't know why people are surprised that like last week we saw the video of a woman who was slaughtered on the road, and people think that it's something unusual, but these are things that people have been living in the northwest and southwest regions for the past 2 years now, and
it was enough to draw the full attention of the international community.
Yes, the international community has not yet been concerned, because we have not seen the international community holding sanctions against the regime, because the government, the Biya regime, has the responsibility to protect its people, and when it fails to do that, the international community has, in one way or the other, need to come and constrain the government to hold a talk to solve the country, the conflict politically, so that there cannot be any violence. But we see that the conflict is now escalating to a point where things will get worse, because because conflicts have a sequence. They have a sequence. It's just like a patient. When a patient is diagnosed with cancer, and when you go and you don't take care of the issue immediately,
it gets to the next stage.
Yes, you become worse. It's just like conflicts are also like that. Once a patient is diagnosed with cancer and you give him a treatment of malaria, it's not going to make his situation better. It's going to instead be worse. So that's why the measures that the government has taken since this crisis started 4 years ago has only aggravated the conflict. We have left from stage 1 to we are about stage 5 now. That stage 5 is where there's war and violence, and when we are in the war zone, anything can happen. It's already a war economy where people benefit now from violence, and we are expecting war crimes from both sides, that is from the military and the separatists. We are expecting genocide, ethnic cleansing. These are things that happen when we are in this kind of national conflict, which is internal conflict.
With your knowledge of conflict management, you before making this important development, you made a point that people were shocked. You are surprised that people were shocked with the images we saw from Muyuka, but that is what has been the talk of the order of the day in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. Probably that of Muyuka came to the limelight, but we've had such cases in north and south. That was what you said. And we are having these things we've not had, or at least we did not have at the start of this conflict, say late 2016, early 2017, and all through. But do you, with your knowledge, have reasons to conclude that as days go by, as the conflict worsens, the attention of the international community paradoxically is diminishing?
It's
because
I won't say
from a journalist perspective, we sometime in 2019 or 2018 we had like repeated statements from the US, from the UN, from the European Union. At least nothing from the African Union, from members of the US Congress, from statement from key people, things which we no longer have at this stage of the conflict, whereas the situation, the acts we see are just so horrible.
That's why when the conflict begins, you need to know the actors, the key actors who are at stake. And once you know the key actors, you know the role that they have to play in the conflict. This government has an essential role to play in this conflict. And the government has been good in doing some sort of diplomacy, trying to corrupt international community, the international community, like superpowers like the United States, the France, and other key nations, so that they can give the impression that they are handling the conflict. That's why sometimes the regime, when they come and they give a fake dialogue, a dialogue, a masquerade called dialogue in the Ghana National Dialogue that took place last year. They give the impression it's to sell it out to the international community that these people, they are handling the conflict, but it is not the case. That is, they are trying to manage the conflict. If you see, each time the Security Council wants to, or the international community is calling for ceasefire, the regime will make some sort of to bring up some sort of measure. Either it is the DDR, that is the demilitarization, demobilization and reintegration project, which is something which cannot come when there is no ceasefire. DDR is effective when there is a ceasefire, and this ceasefire must be negotiated by both sides. This is what they call in conflict management the de-escalation phase, where there is pre-negotiation between the belligerent parties, because you make peace with war makers, not with peacemakers. Those people who have to come on the table are people who have arms to cease the violence. We call it ceasefire because the ceasefire is because when fire is burning, for example, in the house, the first thing is to go and stop the fire and ask yourself why the cause of that fire. You cannot bring about solutions to a crisis when people are still killing each other. And there is a appeasement moment where they need to be trust building. Because when you come to a stage where two people hate each other until they can kill each other, you cannot just go and bring them together and talk. There are some measures that you need to bring them so that they can have trust. So the issue of trust and sincerity is very important before we can have any sincere dialogue. So if the regime is playing a game, because now they are the reconstruction phase, they are selling to the international community that they are, the conflict in the Northwest has ended and they are now doing reconstruction. But we are seeing that things are not still better off in the field, in the ground, because people are still dying. And when they say there is reconstruction, it means that the international community, they are there for their own interest. That is, all these international actors, they are there for their interest. They are not there for basically for the Cameroonians.
Now, if the government, you are making a very important developments in there. Now, I just want to get something clear too before as we proceed. If the government has actually come up with a couple of these measures, the DDR you talked about, the PPRD, that's the Presidential Plan for the Reconstruction and Development, the organization of the Major National Dialogue, the release of prisoners. Government officials will say these are the measures that are facilitated what the government itself says a greater level of return to normalcy in the northern and southwest regions of Cameroon. But you say these measures are fake, and you also said the government bribes the international community.
Yes, I think this government is an illegitimate government. Illegitimate government in the sense that they are not there to respond to the needs of the people.
But with these measures, are these not measures enough? Well,
there's a double game that this regime is playing.
Okay.
And I wrote an article referring to the fact that the regime is playing some sort of double game, giving the impression to the international community that there's no war, and at the same time they go to implement conflict resolution mechanisms which are not effective on the field. That is, they instead aggravate the conflict. When you say that you are organizing a dialogue and those separatists, people you're fighting against, are not present in the dialogue, who are you dialoguing with? Because for ceasefires to be effective, all the belligerent parties have to sit on the table and draw a plan that will make them to come out of this crisis. One side cannot impose on the other side. Both of them have to do it. When you talk about demilitarization, demobilization, and reintegration, the DDR, it is one side cannot decide on the other side. The actors have to come and draw a mechanism where both of them can be able to demilitarize and reintegrate these soldiers who have been caught in the armed conflicts. So when one side decides on the other side, there is issue of trust, because they don't trust. I cannot shoot you one day and I come to you and I say that let's make peace, and you just accept like that. We need to find some way that I can trust this man in order to bring in some sustainable, peaceful solutions in the country. But it has not been the case. When you talk about reconstruction, who is going to do the reconstruction in a war zone when there is no ceasefire? Ceasefire is the first step for any peaceful dialogue or for any peaceful process to begin. If there's no ceasefire, like as I said, when a house is burning, fire is there. The first thing is to quell the fire and to see what caused the fire. And when you don't do that, all those measures that they are taking, we have seen that they are not effective.
If both parties understand the importance of ceasefire for peace, for any peaceful measure to work successfully in these regions, then, and if they both understand the importance of a ceasefire, and at this point in time we've not had a general ceasefire in the regions concerned, who is then to be blamed?
I will first blame the government, because it's the government that started this conflict. It's the government that has the responsibility to protect its people. It's the government that is there to respond to the needs of the people. The government has to be humble enough to say that it is because of them we are in this crisis, and has to go out to all Cameroonians, bring them on the table and say, let's discuss on how we can go out, we can end this crisis. So once we are at this stage, we need to tell the government that there's an issue of sincerity.
All right.
Because the government gives the impression that they are there to solve the crisis, but they are not doing it. Because sincerity, it means what? Liberate all the political prisoners linked to the Anglophone crisis.
If this crisis, okay, yes,
that's one measure.
Another
one is to make sure there's effective civil liberties, where people can express their grievances without any fear of being arrested or being sent to jail. Once these measures, because these are what they call the trust building measures, once these are not put into place, we cannot have any solution to or any ceasefire, because the other side feels that they cannot obtain what they want in their own land. That is, the Anglophones feel that they are marginalized and they are not having any impact in their country.
Now, at that position where somebody is supposed to do something and he is not doing it, do we still have something that can be done by the international community? The same international community that we at the start say is not been very proactive in the crisis. You also talked about the fact that there's interest. The people, different interests are at play in the crisis in the north and southwest regions of Cameroon, trying to explain that they are at least having what they want. That's probably why they are quiet.
It's not, we have to know that when there's war, there are people who benefit from the war, and there are many people who don't want this war to end because they are benefit from both sides.
So can the international community impose a ceasefire?
It is right now, at the level we are, it is only the international community that can bring both actors to dialogue, because the international community, through the United Nations, can sanction all these actors. The problem with the government is that the government has a problem that they don't want to be at the same level as the separatist fighters. the Siseko, Ayuk Siseko. That is their fear, because it will give the impression that they are not the legitimate rulers in the country. So that is, they don't want to humble themselves to dialogue, because they want to only impose their ideas on other people. So when we are at this stage, it is the international community that can force this to the government. If you don't dialogue, we are going to sanction you economically, and this is going to, and they can also force the separatists. If you don't dialogue, we are going to hold all those that is the activists in other countries who are in Europe and in the United States. So the international community has a greater role to play, because at this point we cannot even hold a dialogue in Cameroon. It must be in a neutral ground because of the matter of trust. And if we cannot do that in Cameroon, one nation, either the United States, even France or Britain or the United Nations, can come and now demand that these two actors should come and dialogue on the table.
Thanks very much, Mr. Wana Emmanuel Bumako. You are a specialist in peace studies and conflict management, and the spokesperson of AG, movement of Christian Pendaikoka.
Yes.
We are very grateful. It was an interesting chat.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, to you, we say thank very much for your kind attention. Stay with Equinoxe Television. Interesting programs continue.